Hello students, just getting started here on percentages, and so hopefully everybody has their workbook open to the right page. We're supposed to be on page 2, and we're going to proceed through all of the instructions on this page. So make sure you have it in front of you. You have to have a pencil with you so that you can write down these notes, which you're going to need for doing the assignment for tonight. Hopefully everyone's ready. Let's get started. So we're working with percentages, and we're going to try a bunch of applications later, but at the beginning, the first thing we have to do is figure out how to convert between percentages, fractions, and decimals. So we're going to start off with the definition. The fraction that is a percent is always out of 100, and that's where that word per, for every, cent, 100. And so the first goal we have is to take these percentages and turn them into fractions. And the way we do it is to understand that this symbol, percent, is actually just a rewritten version of over 100, so that when we do 46%, we're writing 46 over 100. And as always, we need to simplify this fraction, which shouldn't be much of an issue for you. You all know how to chop numbers in half, hopefully. The next question is the 180%, and yes, it is possible to have percentages that are over 100. 180% means 80% more than 100%. So we can just write it over 100. It's going to be an improper fraction, and we still need to reduce it like normal. Now here's a skill that I may have mentioned once, but I'll try it again. If I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 10, it's the same thing as removing that final 0, right? Because that's what happens when you divide by 10. So it reduces my fraction right away to 18 over 10, and then we can chop those two numbers in half and get 9/5. The third fraction, or percentage, has a decimal in it. Now you're allowed to have decimals in percentages, no problem, that's fine. But you're not allowed to have fractions with decimals. So we got to figure out a way to fix 7.5 over 100. Now, the fastest way of getting rid of the decimal is to multiply the top and the bottom by 10. And if you do that, you're going to be sliding the decimal over one position on the top, so that'll be 75. And on the bottom, you'll be sliding it over one spot, leaving you with 1,000 when you fill in with the 0. Now that's a bit of a pain to reduce. Hopefully you recognize that 25 divides into the top and into the bottom. So it gives us 3 out of 40. I just divided the top and the bottom by 25. Now another way of doing this, for the people that are pretty good at looking for shortcuts, is that I can just multiply the top by 2. Because if 7.5 is doubled, it's going to give me a nice whole number, 15. And then the denominator would be multiplied by 2 also, giving me 200. And reducing that fraction is a little bit easier because you just have to divide by 5. Either way, though, you get the same answer for both of them. So that's the skill, changing a percent to a fraction. Shouldn't be too bad. The next one is how we change fractions to percentages. Now, there's going to be 2 different types of ways to do this. The first of which is where we're going to rewrite the fraction with a denominator of 100. The problem is this can't always be done. Anyways, it's straightforward. You just have to rewrite it as something over 100, and whatever you got on the top, that is going to be your percentage. So the goal is, okay, how many times is 20 going to 100? Goes 5 times. You multiply the top by 5 also, you're going to get 85 over 100, which is 85%. Now we have a mixed fraction in this last one, and so there's 2 ways we can handle it. The first of which is to rewrite this mixed fraction as 32 over 25, right? You know how to do that, I hope. And then I could multiply the top and the bottom by 4, and that would give me, multiply by 4, 128 over 100. Now the reason I'm writing it up here is I want to show you a better way of doing this. But it would still give us the 128 over 100, which is 128%. The other way of doing this is to just remember that this one whole number is also going to be the one whole number in front of this fraction. Rewriting 7 over 25, I would multiply by 4, and that gives me 28. Now the really easy thing about fractions when they're out of 100 is to rewrite them as a percentage. You simply have the 128% together. If you're not comfortable with the mixed fraction, you can work with the improper. Okay, on to the topic that's just a little more difficult because it requires doing a division when the fraction cannot be written out of 100 easily, right? 8 doesn't go into 100 evenly. You have to have a backup way of doing it. Now, there are some of you in the class who might turn around and say, oh, you could just multiply by 12.5. Where you come up with that, I don't know, but that's perfect. But to make sure we always have the same way of doing these questions, we're just going to change this into a decimal first, and then we're going to turn it into a percentage. Now, the way we turn something into a decimal is to do the top divided by the bottom. Now, remember that that means 5 divided by 8 in this particular question, but we write it as 8 into 5, right? Because it's divided by 8, so it's 8 into 5. And expect that when we do this, usually the number is bigger that's going into a smaller number. So 8 is going into 5. You're going to add a few zeros here. I usually stick 3 there just to be sure, and start my division. Let's go through this a little bit quickly. I don't want to spend too long on it. Everybody's comfortable with dividing by now. You can't go into the 5, but you can go into the 50, and it goes 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. We're going to subtract that and get 2 and bring down the next 0. 8 into 20 goes twice, leaving us with 16. Subtracting that, we get 4, bring down the next 0, and that's going to be 5, and then ends up with 0. Now, in this particular case, the decimals stopped, ended at the 5, 3 decimal places. So as a decimal, this number is 0.625. We need to change that into a percentage. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead to what we got in step number 4, and that is how to turn a decimal into a percent. We multiply it by 100, okay? And multiplying this by 100 is going to slide the decimal 2 places to the right. And so that's going to be 62.5. Now, I can't say that 0.625 is equal to 62.5. That's not true. But as soon as I put the percent symbol there, it now is a true statement. And we have a percentage with a decimal in it, no problem. Now, you have probably encountered the fraction 2/3 before. 2/3 is one of those weird ones. When you try to turn it into a decimal, it's going to be going on forever, to infinity. So let's take a quick look at why this happens and how to handle it. So I'm dividing the bottom into the top. 3 goes into 2, and then I'm going to put a few zeros here. And let's look at the process. 3 goes into 2, it doesn't. 3 goes into 20, it goes 6 times. Remainder, and that gives us 18, and remainder 2. You'll bring down the next 0, and we're going to wind up with 20 again. It won't take you that long to realize that we have a repeating pattern that's going to go on forever, because every time we have that 2 appear and bring down the 0, it's going to leave us with something that divides by 6 with a remainder of, that's right, 2. And so we would keep going. This is called a repeating decimal, and so there's 2 ways we can write it. The first of which is to go ... forever. But the more correct way of writing it in shorthand is to just put whatever is repeating, in this case it's a 6, with a bar on the top. And that is bar notation for writing a repeating decimal. Now, strangely enough, that's not going to be as useful for us in this particular example because of what we have to do with the value. So I'm going to write the decimal for 2/3 as 0.666 with 3 dots. Okay, shows me it continues forever. And to turn it into a percentage, I need to multiply it by 100. So I'm going to slide the decimal 2 places to the right as we normally would, and that would be 66.6, and that's also repeating forever, percent. Now, I will accept this as an answer, but the correct way of writing it is going to be 66.6 bar percent. Incidentally, side note, if you were to calculate this on a calculator, it would show you 0.666666667. It would round that last digit, even though we know that it really isn't a 7, it's 6 is going forever. The calculator rounds it to a value that we need. Okay, hopefully everyone followed along there. Fortunately, the last two tasks we have to do are easier. We're going to be just multiplying or dividing by 100 when we switch percentages to decimals and back again. So the skill is you change the percentage to a decimal by dividing by 100. And the way you remember that is just remember that this percentage symbol means per 100. So divided by 100. And to do that division, you slide the decimal. It's going to wind up 2 decimal places smaller. So the decimal, which is sitting here on the 46, is going to move 2 decimal places to the left, and my answer is 0.46. And yeah, we've used the number 46 a couple of times on this page. Now, a couple more things to watch for. 7%. This is a single digit, but we need to slide the decimal 2 places to the left. Your answer is not going to be 70. It's not going to be 0.7, it's going to be 0.07. And I'm going to put that extra 0 in the front to remind me, okay, that there's a decimal there. And remember, like I said, 0.07 is equal to 7%, not 70%. We now have a percentages that is over 100, and we're going to have to change that into decimal. And it's going to be a decimal that's more than 1. Sliding the decimal over 2 places to the left is going to give me 1.3. And the last one here, which is 0.2%. It's so weird, but this is the one where students will make mistakes because they think the number actually has to get bigger because it's already small. But remember, this symbol means divide by 100. So we're going to divide this by 100. It's going to get 2 decimal places smaller. And that's going to leave me with 0.002 with the 0 in front. 0.2% is a very small amount. It's like less than 1%. A fifth of a percent, if you want to look at it that way. All right, and then the last section here is changing decimals to percentages, and that is the reverse of what we just did. Changing a decimal to a percentage means you have to move the decimal 2 places bigger, all right? So it's the equivalent of multiplying by 100, which is going to be moving the decimal 2 places to the right, and that's going to give me 8. But you don't just write 8. You're going to write 8%. 0.08 is 8%, 8 out of 100. 1.3775, we're going to multiply that by 100. And that's going to become 2 decimal places bigger, is going to be 137.5%. Again, it's a situation where we're over 100%. And the last one, another one of those strange kind of questions that can get you confused. This is the number 3. It's a whole number. So it's going to represent a number that's over 100%. It's actually going to be 300%. Hopefully everything here is making sense. You have all these answers written down, and you're going to be able to continue on to the examples on the next page using these notes as a guideline. So good luck with that, and have fun with percentages.